The sun had set on another day at the Galactic Assembly Station. Floating in neutral space, the massive structure housed representatives from over 200 species. Jack Mason stood at the viewport watching distant stars. As Earth's senior diplomat, he carried the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. "Ambassador Mason, they're requesting your presence in Chamber 4, said Diane, his assistant. Jack straightened his simple blue uniform. Unlike other species representatives who wore elaborate ceremonial garb, humans preferred functionality. His only adornment was the silver Earth emblem on his collar. "Did they mention why?" he asked. "The Veridon delegation? Something about a formal declaration?" Jack sighed. The Veridon Empire had been increasingly hostile since humans began expanding their colony efforts. 3 new human outposts had been established near what the Veridons considered their territory, though no formal boundaries existed in that sector. "Better not keep them waiting," Jack said. The central hallway bustled with activity. 6-limbed Tricerians shuffled alongside floating Mir delegates. A group of reptilian Kaza merchants bowed respectfully as Jack passed. Despite being newcomers to galactic society, humans had earned some respect through their adaptability and diplomatic efforts. Chamber 4 loomed ahead, a massive amphitheater where major announcements were made. Jack was surprised to find it nearly full. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, murmuring among themselves. "What's happening?" Jack whispered to Li Wei, the Martian colony representative who joined him at the entrance. "The Emperor's delegation arrived an hour ago, unscheduled. They've been waiting for you specifically." Jack spotted the Veridon contingent immediately. Tall, gray-skinned humanoids with distinctive ridge patterns on their faces. They occupied the central platform. Their elaborate purple and gold armor gleamed under the chamber lights. At their center stood a figure Jack recognized from briefings, Emperor Zaxkor himself, a rare appearance outside Veridon space. The Emperor's presence elevated this from a diplomatic issue to a potential crisis. Jack made his way to the human delegation's position, nodding greetings to allied species. The Arcturian delegate reached out a tentacle in solidarity as he passed. "Emperor Zaxkor honors us with his presence," Jack said with a formal bow as he reached the speaking position. The Emperor's yellow eyes narrowed. "The honor is questionable." "Human, we come with purpose." A ripple of anticipation moved through the chamber. "The Veridon Empire has watched your species spread like a disease through the galaxy. You claim territories beyond your ability to protect or develop. You meddle in affairs beyond your comprehension." Jack maintained his diplomatic composure, despite the insult. "Earth seeks peaceful cooperation with all species, including the honored Veridons." The Emperor made a dismissive gesture. "Peace is earned through strength. Humans have shown neither." With a snap of his fingers, the Emperor summoned someone from behind his throne. The crowd gasped. A female Veridon stepped forward, but unlike any Jack had seen before. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, her gray skin was interwoven with glowing, blue cybernetic enhancements. Her eyes were replaced with optical sensors that pulsed with cold light. Where other Veridons wore ceremonial armor, she was encased in what appeared to be a combat exoskeleton. "This is Commander Valara," the Emperor announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "My strongest warrior, undefeated in 17 galactic cycles, champion of the Veridon Empire." Valara stared down at Jack with open contempt. "I formally challenge humanity to prove its worth," she declared. "If you refuse, the galaxy will know humans for the cowards they are. If you accept and fail, your colony worlds at Proxima, Tau City, and Epsilon Eridani will be surrendered to Veridon control." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Such challenges were ancient protocol, rarely invoked in modern diplomatic relations. Jack felt every eye in the chamber upon him. The human colonies represented millions of lives, families who had built new homes among the stars. "And if humanity prevails?" Jack asked calmly. Valara laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "Then the Emperor would acknowledge humanity's place among the stars. But make no mistake, human, you will not prevail." Jack stepped forward. I accept your challenge on behalf of Earth and her colonies. The chamber fell silent. The game had begun. The news of Jack's acceptance spread through the station like wildfire. Within hours, every diplomat, trader, and worker knew about the challenge. Jack sat in the human embassy's small meeting room, surrounded by his worried team. "You should have consulted us before accepting," said Diane, pacing the room. "This is exactly what the Veridons want. They've engineered this entire situation." "We had no choice," Jack replied, studying the files on his tablet. "Refusing would have made us appear weak to every species watching. The Veridons would have used that to isolate us politically." An older man with graying hair leaned forward. "Ambassador Mason, I served in the military before joining diplomatic service. Commander Valara isn't just any warrior. She's been genetically modified and enhanced since birth." "Her combat record is terrifying." Jack looked up. "I've read the file, Sam. I know what I'm facing." "Then you know you can't win," Sam said flatly. Jack set down his tablet. "I don't need to win. I just need to show that humans belong here." The door chimed, and a station official entered. "The Emperor's delegation has arranged for the trials to begin tomorrow at 800 hours. They've requested your presence at the ceremonial dinner tonight." After the official left, Jack turned to his team. "I need everything we have on Veridon physiology, their combat techniques, and especially anything about Commander Valara's modifications." The Grand Hall was transformed for the dinner. Species from across the galaxy mingled, though Jack noticed many kept their distance from the human delegation. Fear of associating with potential losers, he suspected. Emperor Zaxcor sat on an elevated platform surrounded by his advisors. When Jack entered, the Emperor made a show of looking bored. "The human arrives," he announced. "Come forward, Ambassador Mason. Meet your better." Jack approached with dignified steps. Standing before the platform, he saw Commander Valara up close for the first time. Her cybernetic enhancements were more extensive than he'd initially realized. Thin lines of blue, energy pulsed beneath her gray skin. Her left arm appeared fully mechanical, with joints that suggested strength beyond anything human muscles could achieve. "You still have time to withdraw," Valara said, her voice surprisingly melodic despite her fearsome appearance. "Admit human weakness. The Emperor might show mercy to your colonies." Jack smiled politely. "I appreciate your concern, Commander, but I'm looking forward to our competition." The Emperor laughed. "Such arrogance. This will be even more entertaining than I hoped." He stood addressing the gathered crowd. "Tomorrow we will witness 3 trials. First, strength, then endurance, finally, combat skill, each designed to demonstrate the natural order of species in our galaxy." As servers brought exotic foods to the tables, Jack found himself approached by representatives from various species. Some offered sympathy, others veiled threats about making deals with the Veridons after humanity's defeat. An elegant blue-skinned Narai ambassador slipped next to Jack while he was alone. "Human," she whispered, "be careful. The last 3 species who faced such challenges no longer have representation in the assembly." "Thank you for the warning," Jack replied quietly. "The commander has undergone recent upgrades specifically for this confrontation," the Narai continued. "The Emperor has spent considerable resources to ensure your humiliation will be absolute." Before Jack could respond, Commander Valara appeared beside them. The Narai ambassador quickly departed. "Gathering. Intelligence, human. It won't help you," Valara said. Jack took a sip from his glass. "Just enjoying the company, Commander. This is my first Imperial Veridon dinner." "It will also be your last," she said, leaning closer. "Tomorrow, when you kneel before me in defeat, remember that your failure condemns millions of your kind to Veridon rule." Jack met her enhanced eyes steadily. "I look forward to surprising you, Commander." The trial of strength began at precisely 800 hours in the station's central arena. Originally designed for cultural exhibitions, today it had been transformed into a competition ground. Tiered seating surrounded a circular platform, now filled with various testing equipment. Nearly every representative in the Galactic Assembly had come to watch. Jack arrived wearing a simple Earth exercise uniform. black shorts and a gray t-shirt with the Earth emblem. His appearance drew murmurs from the audience who had expected more protective gear or equipment. Emperor Zaxkor sat on a floating throne at the highest point of the arena. "Let the first trial commence," he announced, his voice amplified throughout the space. "Commander Valara will demonstrate the natural superiority of Veridon physiology." Valara entered to cheers from the Veridon delegation. She had removed her formal armor, revealing her combat suit beneath, a skin-tight material interwoven with glowing blue circuitry. Her cybernetic arm gleamed under the lights. The first test station held a massive metal cube. "The strength trial is simple," announced the neutral Arcturian judge. "Contestants will attempt to lift and move the standardized weight. The cube is composed of dense neutronium alloy, weighing exactly 500 standard units." Valara stepped forward first, as was her right as challenger. She positioned herself beside the cube, planted her feet, and engaged her cybernetic enhancements. Blue energy surged visibly through her body as she gripped the cube. With a growl that turned into a roar, she lifted the cube clear off the ground. The audience gasped. She held it for 30 seconds before carefully setting it down, then turned to Jack with a smirk. "Your turn, human," she said, stepping back. "Try not to injure yourself." Jack approached the cube calmly. He circled it once, examining each side, then knelt to look underneath. Some in the audience laughed at what they perceived as hesitation. "Is the human forfeiting?" the Emperor called out mockingly. Jack ignored him. He moved to one edge of the cube and positioned himself low to the ground. Instead of trying to lift with his arms as Valara had done, he placed his shoulder against one edge and pushed with his legs. The cube didn't budge at first. Jack adjusted his position, took a deep breath, and pushed again. Slowly, one edge of the cube lifted off the ground. Using the leverage he'd created, Jack maneuvered himself under the slightly raised edge and began to use his whole body to push upward. The audience fell silent as Jack continued his unconventional approach. With careful movements, he managed to tip the cube onto one edge. Using the momentum, he guided it through a controlled fall onto its side, then repeated the process until the cube had been completely flipped over. When he finished, Jack stood straight, breathing hard but otherwise composed. He had not lifted the cube as Valara had, but he had moved it just as effectively. "The human has completed the task using alternative methods," the Arcturian judge announced. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Emperor's expression darkened. "Clever trick," Valara said, her voice carrying a hint of respect despite her words. "But the next test requires pure endurance, not tricks." Jack nodded politely. "Different approaches to the same problem. That's the human way." The second test involved lifting progressively heavier weights. Again, Valara used her enhancements to demonstrate impressive raw strength. Jack, instead of competing directly, used principles of leverage and fulcrum points to achieve similar results with less direct force. By the third strength test, the audience was divided. Some admired Jack's ingenuity, others considered his methods cheating. The Veridon delegation grew increasingly agitated. As Jack completed the final strength challenge, he noticed something unexpected, a flicker of genuine curiosity in Valara's eyes. Behind her programmed arrogance, there seemed to be interest in his unconventional approaches. The Arcturian judge approached the center platform. "The trial of strength is concluded. Both contestants have successfully completed all tasks. We will proceed to the trial of endurance after a short recess." The arena transformed during the short break. Station technicians removed the strength testing equipment and installed a clear chamber in the center of the platform. The crowd returned to their seats with fresh excitement, many placing bets on how quickly the human would fail the next challenge. Jack used the break to hydrate and stretch. Diane approached with concern etched on her face. "The endurance chamber is set for extreme conditions," she warned. "We've received intelligence that the Veridons calibrated it beyond standard safety protocols." Jack took a long drink of water. "What specifically am I facing?" "Rapid temperature shifts, atmospheric pressure changes, and something our sources couldn't identify. Possibly a pain inducer of some kind." Jack nodded calmly. "I expected something like this." "Jack, Diane said quietly. "You don't have to continue. We could file a formal protest about the chamber modifications." "And appear weak?" Jack shook his head. "No. I'll handle it." The Arcturian judge called for the contestants to return. Jack walked back to the platform where Valara already waited, looking completely recovered from the first trial. "The trial of endurance will test physical and mental resilience," the judge announced. "Contestants will enter the chamber and endure escalating environmental stress until one withdraws or safety protocols engage." Valara stepped forward. "I claim the right to enter second, as the challenge party in this trial." This was unexpected. Protocol typically had the challenger demonstrate first. "Granted," the judge said after consulting the rulebook. Jack showed no reaction as he approached the chamber. The transparent door slid open, and he stepped inside. The door sealed with a hiss, and he stood alone in the empty space, visible to all observers. "Beginning sequence 1, the judge announced. The first test was cold. The temperature plummeted rapidly, and Jack's breath became visible. Frost formed on the inside walls of the chamber. Jack closed his eyes and controlled his breathing, using techniques developed by human cold exposure specialists. The audience watched as the temperature indicator dropped to dangerous levels. Jack remained standing, his posture relaxed despite the extreme cold. After 5 minutes, the chamber shifted to intense heat. Steam rose from the floor as the temperature soared. Jack's skin reddened, but he maintained his composed stance, adjusting his breathing pattern for the new condition. Next came gravitational shifts. The chamber's artificial gravity increased to twice Earth normal, then 3 times. Jack's legs trembled slightly, but he adapted his stance to distribute the pressure more effectively across his body. "Remarkable," murmured a Narai scientist in the audience. "The human is using mental techniques to manage the physiological responses." The final phase began after 20 minutes. Small nodes in the chamber walls activated, sending waves of discomfort through Jack's body. The pain inducer. Jack's face tightened, the first real sign of distress he had shown. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne, anticipating the human's surrender. But Jack closed his eyes, his expression shifting as he seemed to enter a meditative state. 30 minutes passed. The chamber had cycled through every programmed challenge, yet Jack remained standing. The Arcturian judge seemed surprised as he announced, "The human has completed the maximum endurance protocol." The chamber door opened, and Jack walked out steadily despite the ordeal. The audience's reaction was mixed, impressed murmurs from some, disappointed hisses from others who had wagered against him. Valara entered the chamber next. Her cybernetic enhancements glowed brighter as the tests began, automatically adjusting to counteract each environmental challenge. She stood perfectly still, almost bored as the cold, heat, and gravity shifts cycled through. When the pain inducers activated, however, something unexpected happened. Her cybernetic systems flickered, blue energy pulsing erratically. Her face contorted in sudden pain. "Malfunction," she gasped, her voice barely audible through the chamber. Jack noticed immediately. Without hesitation, he stepped toward the judge. "Something's wrong with her systems. Stop the test." The Emperor raised his hand. "Continue the trial. She will endure or fail." Valara fell to one knee, blue energy sparking from her implants. Jack turned to the technicians instead of the judge. "Override code emergency medical, station protocol 7. The chamber powered down immediately. Jack rushed forward as the door opened, catching Valara before she collapsed completely. "Why?" she whispered, her enhanced eyes flickering as systems tried to reboot. "Because that's also the human way," Jack replied quietly. The medical team worked on Valara for nearly an hour, before declaring her fit to continue. Jack watched from across the preparation area as Veridon technicians recalibrated her cybernetic systems. The Emperor had been furious about the interruption, but couldn't object publicly without appearing callous toward his champion. "You showed compassion to your opponent," Sam said, handing Jack a nutrient drink. "The other species are talking about it. The Narai delegation seems particularly impressed." Jack sipped the drink. "I didn't do it for political points." Sam smiled, slightly. which is exactly why it's working in our favor. The arena had been reconfigured once more. The endurance chamber was gone, replaced by a simple circular combat zone marked with glowing boundaries. Weapons of various types lined the walls, everything from energy staves to traditional bladed weapons. Final preparations for the trial of combat, announced the Arcturian judge. This will be direct competition, testing skill, strategy, and battlefield dominance. Jack finished his drink and stood. His uniform showed signs of the previous trials, scorch marks from the heat test, tears from the gravity pressure. He had declined the offer of fresh clothes, preferring the authenticity of his appearance. Valara entered from the opposite side. Her cybernetic enhancements pulsed with steady blue light again, but Jack noticed subtle differences in her movement. Patterns. The malfunction had affected her more than she wanted to show. "The human sabotaged my systems," she declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "He triggered the shutdown to humiliate me." The Emperor nodded in agreement from his elevated position. A dishonorable tactic. Jack remained silent, refusing to engage with the accusation. The Arcturian judge stepped between them. "The combat trial will proceed without further delay. Contestants may select 2 weapons each." Valara immediately chose an energy pike and a set of gravity disruptors, small devices that could alter localized gravity fields to disorient opponents. Jack selected only a simple staff, leaving his second choice unclaimed. "Begin," called the judge, quickly retreating from the combat zone. Valara moved with blinding speed, her cybernetic legs propelling her across the arena floor in a zigzag pattern designed to confuse human visual tracking. The pike extended in her hands, crackling, with energy as she thrust it toward Jack's chest. Jack pivoted at the last moment, allowing the pike to pass within inches of his body. He didn't counterattack immediately, instead observing Valara's movements, noting the patterns in her cybernetically enhanced fighting style. The audience grew restless as Jack continued his defensive approach, dodging and weaving but rarely engaging directly. After several minutes, the Emperor shouted, "The human fears to attack. He knows his inferiority." Jack remained focused on Valara, ignoring the taunt. He had noticed something crucial. After each attack sequence, her systems required a microsecond recalibration, visible only as a faint stutter in her movements. Valara activated the gravity disruptors, tossing them in a pattern around Jack. The devices created pockets of increased gravity that pulled at his limbs from multiple directions. Most opponents would be torn off balance, becoming easy targets. Instead of fighting against the gravitational pulls, Jack used them. He allowed one disruptor to pull him forward, adding his own momentum to roll beneath Valara's pike thrust. Coming up behind her, he struck for the first time, a precise tap of his staff against a junction point in her cybernetic spine. The blow wasn't powerful, but it hit exactly where her systems were already compensating for the earlier malfunction. Valara staggered, her movements becoming temporarily uncoordinated. The crowd gasped. Nobody had seen Valara vulnerable in combat before. She recovered quickly, anger evident in her enhanced eyes. "Luck," she snarled, engaging her combat systems to maximum output. Blue energy surged across her body as she unleashed a flurry of attacks. Jack weathered the storm, taking glancing hits that drew blood from his arm and shoulder. He maintained his focus, waiting for an opening. When Valara overextended on a thrust, Jack moved inside her guard and struck the same junction point again. This time, Valara's right leg buckled completely. She caught herself with her cybernetic arm, still dangerous even at a disadvantage. Jack could have pressed his attack, could have struck a final blow that would have humiliated her before her Emperor and the galaxy. Instead, he stepped back and lowered his staff. Confusion rippled through the arena as Jack stood back, staff lowered. Valara remained on one knee, her systems attempting to recalibrate. Blue energy sparked erratically from her cybernetic implants, racing across her body in uneven pulses. "Finish her," someone shouted from the Veridon delegation. Others joined in, the bloodlust of the moment overtaking diplomatic decorum. The Emperor rose from his throne, eyes narrowed with anger. "The human refuses to complete his victory. This is not mercy, it is mockery." Jack kept his attention fixed on Valara. "Can you continue?" he asked quietly, his voice not carrying to the audience. Valara's enhanced eyes flickered between blue and their natural yellow. "My systems are failing. Something is wrong." There was confusion in her voice and, for the first time, fear. A violent surge of energy erupted from her spine implant, causing her body to arch backward in pain. Smoke began rising from the junction points of her enhancements. Jack dropped his staff and rushed forward as Valara collapsed fully to her knees. "Medical emergency!" Jack shouted to the judge. "Her cybernetics are overloading!" The Emperor's voice cut through the growing commotion. "Stand back, human. Commander Valara's failure is complete. She will face the consequences as Veridon law demands." Imperial guards entered the arena, moving toward Valara with weapons drawn. Jack realized with horror what was happening. They weren't coming to help her, but to execute her for her failure. This wasn't part of the challenge, Jack said, positioning himself between Valara and the approaching guards. "Move aside, Ambassador," ordered the lead guard. "This is Imperial business." "She requires medical attention," Jack insisted. "Her systems are malfunctioning, not failing." The Emperor descended from his platform, his ceremonial robes billowing around him. "You dare interfere in Veridon affairs? The commander's cybernetics were perfect. Her failure is one of will, of worthiness. Such weakness cannot be tolerated in the Emperor's elite." Jack didn't budge. Behind him, Valara's breathing had become labored, her cybernetic systems shutting down one by one. Without their support, her modified body couldn't function properly. "As Earth's representative, I claim diplomatic protection for Commander Valara," Jack announced, his voice carrying throughout the arena. "Until her medical condition is stabilized and investigated." The Emperor's face darkened with rage. "You have no such authority." "Article 17 of the Assembly Charter," Jack replied calmly. "Any contestant in a formal challenge who suffers life-threatening injury may claim neutral medical evaluation." The Arcturian judge, consulting his records, nodded reluctantly. "The human is correct, Emperor. The medical protocol supersedes Imperial authority in the arena." Valara looked up at Jack, confusion evident on her face. "Why protect me?" she managed through gritted teeth. Jack knelt beside her. "Because something isn't right. Your systems were sabotaged," the Emperor laughed coldly. "Absurd. The commander's equipment was personally overseen by Imperial technicians." "Exactly," Jack said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He turned to the audience. "I request an independent examination of Commander Valara's cybernetic systems by neutral." "Assembly medical staff." The Emperor's guards moved closer, hands on weapons. The situation teetered on the edge of violence. Other diplomats in the audience began standing, some in support of Jack's request, others backing the Emperor. Valara's body suddenly convulsed as another surge of energy raced through her implants. Jack caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin had taken on a grayish pallor and the blue light of her enhancements was fading rapidly. "She's dying," Jack shouted to the medical team waiting at the arena's edge. "I invoke emergency protocol." The station's chief medical officer, a Tricerian with 6 arms, rushed forward with assistance. "We need to stabilize her neural implants before they completely fail," he said after a quick scan. "Her organic systems are shutting down." The Emperor stepped forward. "As her sovereign, I forbid." "With respect, Emperor," interrupted the Narai ambassador who had risen from her seat. "The Assembly's medical protocols are clear, and many of us are curious why your champion's supposedly superior systems failed so catastrophically." Other ambassadors murmured agreement. The Emperor found himself suddenly outnumbered diplomatically. As the medical team rushed Valara from the arena on a hovering stretcher, Jack followed closely. He caught a final glimpse of the Emperor's face, a mask of barely controlled fury that promised this was far from over. The medical bay hummed with activity as doctors from 3 different species worked to stabilize Valara. Jack watched from behind a transparent barrier, his face showing the strain of the day's events. Diane stood beside him, updating him on the diplomatic chaos unfolding throughout the station. The Emperor is demanding Valara's immediate return to Veridon custody, she said. He's threatening to withdraw from the assembly if his request is denied. Jack nodded absently, his attention fixed on the medical team's efforts. And the other delegations? Divided. Some support the Emperor out of fear or alliance. Others are backing our position, especially after your performance in the trials. Diane hesitated. The Narai ambassador has been particularly vocal in supporting us. There may be more to her interest than simple diplomacy. Before Jack could respond, the Trisarian chief medical officer emerged from the treatment area, all 6 of his arms showing signs of exhaustion. Ambassador Mason, the doctor said, we've stabilized her condition, but what we've discovered is disturbing. Tell me, Jack said. Commander Valara's cybernetic systems were indeed sabotaged, but not in the way you might expect. The doctor displayed a holographic image showing Valara's internal systems. These components here, connected to her neural pathways, were designed to degrade over time. More specifically, they were programmed to fail during high-stress situations like combat. Jack's eyes narrowed. They were meant to fail during our challenge. Precisely. And these components bear the Imperial Engineering seal. They were installed, deliberately by Veridon technicians, Diane gasped. The Emperor set her up to fail. Can I speak with her? Jack asked. The doctor nodded. Briefly, we've had to place her organic systems in partial stasis while we disconnect the failing cybernetics. Inside the treatment room, Valara lay on a medical platform, much of her cybernetic armor removed. Without her enhancements, she looked smaller, vulnerable. Her natural yellow eyes opened when Jack approached. The human returns, she said, her voice weaker without her vocal enhancements. Come to witness my disgrace? Jack pulled up a seat beside her. I came to tell you that your systems were sabotaged by your own people. Valara's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Impossible. I am the Emperor's chosen. The evidence is conclusive, Jack said gently. The components were designed to fail during our challenge. The Emperor wanted you to lose. Valara turned her face away. Why would my Emperor betray me? I have served loyally for 20 cycles. Perhaps too loyally, Jack suggested. The medical team found something else. Your most recent memories were being constantly transmitted to Imperial headquarters. Everything you saw, everything you heard. Valara's eyes widened. I was surveillance, and possibly a threat, Jack added. A warrior as decorated as you, with access to Imperial secrets, might eventually become too powerful. Silence fell between them as Valara processed this betrayal. Finally, she spoke. The colonies. Did I lose our challenge? Jack smiled slightly. The trials were interrupted. Technically, no victor was declared. Then the human colonies remain free. For now. The Emperor is demanding your return. Valara's expression hardened. To silence me permanently. She struggled to sit up. I require communication access. I must speak to certain military commanders who are less loyal to the Emperor than they appear. Jack helped her adjust her position. That would be interfering in Veridon internal politics. Yes, Valara agreed. Just as the Emperor interfered in our challenge. Outside the medical bay, tension was building. Imperial guards had assembled in the corridor, blocked only by station security. The Arcturian judge arrived, looking concerned. Ambassador Mason, a decision must be made, he said when Jack emerged. The Emperor has presented formal documentation claiming Commander Valara is Imperial property due to her cybernetic enhancements. Jack's expression darkened. She is a person, not property. Under Veridon law, under Assembly law, Jack interrupted, any individual may request asylum if they can demonstrate threat to life upon return to their government. The judge looked uncomfortable. Has the commander made such a request? Jack turned to look through the transparent barrier where Valara was now sitting up, determination replacing the defeat in her eyes. Why don't we ask her? Jack said. From inside the medical bay, Valara's voice came through clearly. I formally request asylum with the human delegation. The assembly chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every species had gathered for what many were calling the most significant diplomatic event in a decade. The Veridon Empire and Earth, two powers that had been on the brink of conflict, now faced each other across the chamber floor. Jack stood at the human delegation's position, Diane and Sam flanking him. Across the chamber, Emperor Zack's corps glowered, surrounded by military advisors rather than his usual diplomatic staff. The message was clear. This was now about power, not diplomacy. This emergency session will address the asylum request of Commander Valara, announced the senior Arcturian judge. Both parties will present their positions. The Emperor stepped forward immediately. There is nothing to discuss. The commander is Imperial military property. Her enhancements were funded by the Veridon state. Her contract of service is lifelong. This human has stolen what belongs to the Empire. Jack remained calm as whispers spread through the chamber. Commander Valara is here to speak for herself, he said, gesturing to the entrance. Valara entered slowly. Most of her cybernetic enhancements had been removed, replaced with simple medical supports. She walked with difficulty, her body adjusting to functioning without the systems it had relied on for years. Despite her physical weakness, her presence commanded attention. I served the Veridon Empire loyally for 20 cycles, she began, her voice steady despite lacking its former mechanical resonance. I led Imperial forces to 17 victories. I gave my body to be enhanced for the glory of the Empire. She paused, looking directly at the Emperor. And in return, I was sabotaged by my own sovereign. The Emperor's face darkened. These are the delusions of a failed warrior seeking to preserve her honor through lies. Valara smiled thinly. The medical records have been distributed to all delegations. The sabotage components bear Imperial engineering seals. And I have already communicated with Fleet Commander Dorax and Base Commander Varen. They were most interested in how the Emperor treats his loyal servants. At the mention of those names, the Emperor's composure slipped momentarily. His eyes widened in genuine alarm. The commanders you contacted are guilty of treason, he declared. They will be dealt with accordingly. Perhaps, Valara replied. But they control 60% of the Imperial fleet, and they now know what awaits them should they ever fall from favor. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the implications became clear. The Veridon Empire was facing internal division. Several delegates began quietly updating their governments. Jack stepped forward. The human delegation has a proposal. Commander Valara's asylum request will be granted. In exchange, Earth will not press charges against the Veridon Empire for violating assembly protocols regarding the sabotage of combat participants. You dare to threaten me? The Emperor hissed. Not a threat, Jack clarified. An opportunity. You return to your empire with your reputation intact. We avoid a conflict neither side wants, and Commander Valara begins a new life. The Narai ambassador rose from her seat. The Narai Collective supports this proposal and offers neutral territory for any further negotiations between Earth and Veridon. One by one, other influential species indicated their support. The Emperor found himself increasingly isolated. With a final glare of hatred at both Jack and Valara, he made a sharp gesture of acceptance, the minimum required under Veridon protocol. This matter is concluded, the Emperor declared coldly. The commander is no longer Veridon. She is nothing. Though. The Emperor swept from the chamber with his entourage. The tension broke. Delegates began talking excitedly, many approaching the human delegation to offer congratulations or establish new diplomatic connections. Valara turned to Jack. The Emperor will not forget this humiliation. You have made a powerful enemy. Jack nodded. And Earth has gained a powerful ally, I hope. For the first time, Valara smiled genuinely. I know many things about Imperial defenses that your military strategists would find valuable. And I find myself suddenly in need of employment. I think we can arrange something, Jack said, returning her smile. But first, there's much you need to learn about humans. Like why you helped an enemy who was sent to humiliate you. Jack considered this, because sometimes the strongest response isn't domination. Sometimes it's compassion. A strange concept, Valara admitted, but I find myself curious to learn more about it. She straightened her posture with visible effort. And about many other human ways. As they left the chamber together, Jack noticed the other delegates watching them, the human and the former Veridon warrior. A symbol of something unexpected in galactic politics. Cooperation where conflict had been anticipated. The Emperor had sent his strongest to humiliate humanity. Instead, he had created the foundation for his empire's greatest challenge and humanity's most unlikely alliance.